All right, today I want to talk about conflicting motivations. When you're doing a real estate deal, there are lots of parties that are involved, okay? First off, you may have an agent. You may have a title slash escrow slash attorney. You're going to have somebody who's doing the insurance. You're going to have a general contractor. And I'm going to separate these agents from a buyer's agent, and then you're also going to have a seller's agent. They could be representing you for both, or they could be two different. You're going to have a general contractor that is going to be coming in, that's going to be helping you out in those types of things as well. And what I think is really important here is that there are differing motivations for each one of these. And then you've got your motivations, right? So it's important that you realize there are some conflicting interests. So let's take, for example, the buyer's agent. The buyer's agent is going to get a commission when you buy the property. It doesn't matter if you buy a good deal. It doesn't matter if you buy a bad deal. It doesn't matter if you lose money. It does not matter. They are going to get paid a commission and can walk away with money. Here, we'll put a bag of money. They're going to get paid no matter what. I'm not saying that they're going to be malicious. I'm not saying that they're going to be intentional. But I am saying they could unintentionally just be saying, I don't really care. I need a paycheck. I'm going to make this deal happen. It's a good deal. So they're going to be very motivated in you closing regardless. And this doesn't matter if it's your brother, your cousin, your nephew, your best friend's dog. It's basically like if you close, they're going to get a check for $10,000 or $15,000 or whatever the case is. Regardless if you make money, lose money, buy a dump, whatever the case is, okay? The other one we should put on here is a home inspector. And you can probably put the buyer on here, the new buyer, but I think that kind of goes without saying. So that's the first thing you need to realize. When you're out there trying to find properties, we recommend going off-market properties is going to be the best way to get the most amount of profit. However, it's also going to be the hardest way to find a deal, which makes sense, right? Because if there's the most money there, it shouldn't be the easiest way. It should be the hardest way. So we recommend off-market properties, and that's utilizing Investor's Edge software. The other thing that we've got when this comes in here is if there is an agent, okay, they've got motivation to get paid because they get paid when the deal actually happens, regardless of what you sell it for. So as convincing as they may be, I'm not saying that they're bad people. I'm not saying that they're trying to get you in trouble or anything else. But the fact of the matter is they walk away with money and you walk away with a loan. You walk away with a debt on this property that you're responsible for repaying no matter what, okay? So there is a difference in motivation here. Title escrow company, they wanna make sure that the property that they're insuring has clean title and those types of things. They do charge some fees. Lots of those fees, if you get into a situation where everybody's having to give a little, you wanna make sure that you talk to the title company about saying, hey, let's reduce a few of those fees. Insurance or hazard insurance, the big thing people mess up here is it needs to be a vacant policy. Because a general policy isn't going to cover if the property's vacant. The other thing you probably should be really aware of as we talk about insurance is most of the time theft and vandalism, it just really does not get covered under that policy. It's more for catastrophe is really what that policy's for. Now, let's talk about the general contractor, okay? There's a lot of different types of general contractors out there. I classify them as A, B, C, D, and maybe even F. An A-type contractor is somebody that has a lot of experience, has lots of lines of credit, has a great resume, and also is going to be more on the expensive side. A B-type contractor is going to be somebody that probably does their own work, maybe has a couple of their own guys as well, but they're on site. A C-type contractor is going to be somebody that's really a handyman, not a licensed contractor, but thinks he's a licensed contractor. And then, your F contractors are going to be ones that just are a catastrophe, just really bad. So typically for what we work in, A contractors are just too pricey. We usually just can't afford them. So we're typically dealing with B contractors. And with those B contractors, they're typically on the job doing it themselves or on the job with their guys. I prefer somebody that's doing it themselves that's on the job as well. One of the things you'll run into with this when they're on the job and they're doing their own is they are bouncing between job 1, job 2, job 3, job 4, and they're just trying to keep the money coming in. What I find happens a lot with these guys is they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And what I mean by that is the money that you're giving them for this job, they're using to buy materials for this job to finish it up to hopefully get some money so they can buy to this job, and then they can come to this job because of the financial situation that they're in. That creates some motivations that are not aligned with what your motivations are as well. Now, how does a contractor avoid this? Well, they do a few things. Most companies will allow them to get a line of credit plus 90 days, a net 90-day term where it's like, hey, you pay us in 90 days. So this is how it works, even for these big boys, right? They go out there and they're gonna get all kinds of plumbing material. They're gonna go to the plumbing company, they're gonna pick up all this stuff, they're gonna pick up, $20,000 worth of supplies or $10,000 worth of supplies. They're gonna sign a note saying, hey, we'll pay you this back. Then they're gonna go install it. Then the work's going to get inspected, and then once the work's inspected and says it's good, then they're gonna get paid, and then they're going to come back and they're gonna come pay on the line of credit that they have with the plumbing house, and they're able to float that and not come up with any money, but they need to have some dependability. Now, let's say that you're dealing with a B or a C contractor that doesn't have that line of credit. Well, one, they should get a line of credit. They can get them from Home Depot, they can get them from plumbing supply houses. As long as their credit is decent, they can get those. Secondly, if their credit's not that decent, the next thing they need to do is go get a credit card. And lots of times you can get a credit card and you've got 30 days before you have to pay interest on it. Or in some cases, you can get a 0 interest card for the next 12 months. So they can put that on there. And then by the time it's installed, the draw's approved, then they can pay it. And they're not paying any interest on that. But what they're not doing is they're not robbing your money to pay for another job. So when this happens, a couple of things you can get into here. And that is a general contractor is going to do one of two things. A general contractor may not bid all of the costs, okay? So a GC is gonna say, hey, let's go in, I'll give you a bid, I'll do the entire house for $30,000, don't worry about anything. So then you have them start doing the work, maybe you give them some money, they start doing some stuff, but then what happens is they say, oh, that was not included. But you're like, well, I thought it was included, right? So I thought it was included. I thought we had this and that. Oh, no, that wasn't included. And then they want to charge you more money to do that above and beyond what you guys were planning on. Well, normally this is your fault. It's your fault because you didn't scope the work out enough, okay? So one of the things I learned early on, because I had this happen to me multiple times 20 years ago, that I said, okay, we're done with this. So what I would do is I would go into a property, I'd go in with a general contractor, I would take a tape recorder, okay? One of those old ones, I'd press play or press record, and I would record everything. And we would go room by room by room by room, okay? What we were doing is establishing the scope of the rehab. Now the scope consists of what are we doing and what quality are we doing? Okay, so in this room, we're going to redo the baseboards. Great. This is in the bedroom 1. We're redoing the baseboards. We're doing 2-tone paint, or maybe we're doing 1-tone paint. Maybe we're doing some casings, maybe we're not. And basically we're saying, okay, this is what we're planning to do. Okay, great. And maybe you can get some pricing at that time, and maybe you can't. Typically what I would do is go through and get the whole scope together. And we would go room by room by room by room. The second thing we talk about when it comes to quality is, are we doing builder's grade? Are we doing high end? Are we doing Viking stoves? And the way you know what type of quality you need to be doing is gonna be based upon your comparables. When you look at those actives and those sold comparables, you wanna make sure that yours matches those, that's in the same condition as those. Or you find one thing to make just a little bit better, but you don't wanna over repair or under repair because you can't afford to do that and you run out of money real quickly. So we talked about the quality, okay? So we go through the entire house, and luckily you guys get our form that goes through everything in the entire house. We're saying, hey, how are we gonna do this and what type of quality? Builder's grade, high-end, mid-grade, and we make those determinations. Next thing that's gonna happen is we get into pricing, where we say, hey, let's then price out what these things are going to cost. And we do this by line item individually rather than lumping them together. And the reason we do that is when a contractor wants to get paid and they say, hey, we painted the house and the bid to paint the house was $5,000, we've painted half the house, or we did the primer on the house, or we did this or that, we can't pay on that. We have to pay by line item. So if they're gonna say, hey, priming the bedroom 1 is gonna be $300 and priming bedroom 2 is gonna be $400 and that type of stuff, or priming the upstairs is going to be $1,000, and then we say, great, well, once that's all completely primed, then we can pay out on that. It has to be 100% done or it's 0% done. There's no in between. Just because they've got the materials there or it's painted, the baseboards are there and they're painted, but they're not installed, that's a no-go. If it's on the line item, it has to be 100% done or 0% done. So here's what happens is you want to go through and you want to get a detailed bid on all of these. You want to make sure that you understand the quality. Now, some contractors are not going to want to do that, right? They love the ambiguity because they want to come back and say, hey, that was not included. You're going to have to pay more money for that. Well, that will absolutely kill your deal because you've already closed. The money's in escrow. You're not going to get any more money from the lender. The loan docs are drawn. It's done. What's there is there, and you've got to make it work within that. And that's why we take time ahead of time to understand the scope, what are we doing, and the quality that needs to be there. The next thing that we're working on is prices. What are these prices? Because it's really, really difficult when we're talking about a single line item, when we know the price, we know the quality, and what we're doing, to come back and be like, oh, that wasn't included. And that's one of the biggest problems that you'll have with contractors, is it's like, hey, that wasn't included, we weren't planning on that. Now, typically, your A-type contractors are gonna do all this for you, but you can't afford them in most cases. And so what happens is you do it for them. And as a matter of fact, we have our project managers that help out through this process as well. And that's basically the difference that you're getting is you're getting somebody that has those lines of credit, somebody that knows how to do the job forecasting on this and also knows how to do the timelines. Well, working with a good project manager can help you alleviate some of those concerns. And so putting this together and then you put the price together. Well, sometimes what will happen is you put all these prices together and you thought the rehab was gonna be $30,000 and it ends up being $50,000. What changed in this situation? What changed was this whole what's included and what's not included, right? What changed is the scope. What may have changed is the quality, right? So your contractor may be thinking that he's gonna paint everything one color and you may be thinking it's two-tone paint. Oh, well, that's a paint difference because we just can't take the sprayer and do everything, so that's gonna cost more money. Or potentially the comps show you have to have really nice countertops. You gotta have granite countertops rather than just laminate, okay? Well, that's more expensive than maybe what you were planning on doing, so the quality is what's made the price on that go up. So those are things that can have a big influence, and if you don't catch it now, you find yourself in a really big problem. So now the general contractor is gonna say, hey, I'm gonna get paid for this. So lots of general contractors are like, I don't want to go through and do all this, either for a few reasons, because they can't say that's not included, we're going to need more money, or because it does take time to do this, and they say, hey, I don't want to spend all this time doing this if I'm not going to end up with a job. Well, what they need to understand is if they don't do this, they'll never end up with a job from you, and you're somebody that can provide them with multiple jobs. I have contractors that have done, I mean, I would guess 100 different jobs for me, maybe more. But they understand how I work. But what I did is I alleviated that because I would go in with that tape recorder, we'd go room by room, I'd write everything down, I would then type it all up, I would then send it over to them and I would say, this is the line items, this is the quality of workmanship. Now let's talk about prices. Then we'd have a pricing menu. We go through line by line for the pricing. Then once I got the pricing, then I'd go back and look at the comparables and say, okay, is there anything I can cut? Is there anything that needs to be better? Is there anything I could do a little bit worse and save some money on? What would that do to the pricing? Then I say, well, great, if I don't do that, what does that do to the value of the property when I resell the property? And I make those determinations as well. Once I've done all of that stuff, then I know what I'm really going to be into this deal, and then I can go back and renegotiate with a seller. Okay, so, but what I'm saying is the general contractor is willing to start the job without doing these things because he's gonna come back and say that wasn't included and I need more money, and that's a complete disaster. So you're trying to get all that stuff done, or you need to get that stuff done ahead of time, okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about the seller's agent, right? The seller's agent motivation could be different. A seller's agent might be saying, hey, I'm just gonna get buyers from your property and take them to go buy another property. So if your property's overpriced. If the condition's not great, they may do an open house, take somebody through. Oh, I don't love this house. Great, let me help you find some other house that would work better for you, okay? So you wanna make sure that you're working with a seller's agent that has your back. We have some ways that you can do that and some things that you should be getting from your seller's agent on a regular basis, okay? And then let's talk about the home inspector. A home inspector, whether they're inspecting for you or they're inspecting for the new person, they are basically coming in and saying, these are the problems with the property. Those could be little tiny things and they could blow it out of proportion. Like it needs a new electrical outlet or something like that. And then there's a page on it and why that's a problem. Well, what their motivation is to find anything they possibly can, because what they want to do is be able to justify their existence. Like, hey, we found all of these problems with the property, so now you know what to do. Now, sometimes if you're buying the property and you're getting that home inspection, it can be helpful for you renegotiating with the sellers. And sometimes when you've got the property up for sale and somebody else brings in their home inspector, it can scare them away. There's different motivations here, right? The buyer's agent, the seller's agent, the general contractor, the insurance agent, the home inspector, and yourself all have different motivations, because you're trying to make as much money as you can with as little effort as you can and as little work as possible, right? That's really what you're trying to do. However, if you don't do the process with the general contractors, you're going to find yourself with what are called cash calls, which means, hey, you're going to have to come up with additional money because of this. Well, we don't want you to have to do that, which is why we assign a project manager, which is why we follow this entire process. The other thing you're going to get into with general contractors is time. You see, time is money. Every single day that goes by, you're paying property taxes, you're paying insurance, you're paying interest, you're paying for water, sewer, garbage, you're paying for lights, electric, gas, all those things you're paying for every single day. And every day that goes by is one day that's more expensive that you will never get back. So time is everything, which is why the next thing that we do is we put a timeline together. So we take this scope of work and then we say, great, let's determine the timeline when all this work should actually be done on the property, okay? When should this work be done on the property? We come up with a timeline, and what happens is some things can be done at the same time and other things have to be done after something else. So for example, I can't lay carpet till after I paint, right? In most cases. So carpet's gonna be down here towards the last, or finish work is gonna be down here towards last, where some other things, I could do some demo and maybe some plumbing where I'm overlapping those things, and that's called a construction time frame. With that, there is a weekly of what is being done on a weekly basis, week 1, week 2, week 3. And we're saying, great, what got done last week? Why didn't the full scope get done? And will it get done this week? And we use exception management to work through that process to make sure, because you need to get this project done in a very fast time frame. Now, let's go back to our B and C contractors we were talking about. Well, if he's committed to do job 1 and have it done by this date, and he's committed to have your job done by this date as well, there's conflicting interests there as well. So how do you deal with that? Well, you deal with that by setting the expectations up front on time frame, on payment, how draws are going to work, and you make sure that you've got the quality, you make sure that you have the pricing, and you make sure that everybody's on the same page with that, and then you get into timeline conversations on when things are going to be done. Now, there's more advanced strategy you can do where you can do a bonus for the contractor, or you can do a penalty. So basically, if they get it done ahead of schedule, you give them some money. Some people like to give their daily interest. Maybe their daily interest is $100 a day, so they'll give them $50 a day, or maybe they'll say, hey, you finish a week early, we'll give you $500 extra, something like that. Well, and others would say, hey, but if you go past this, my cost on this is $100 a day between interest and taxes and insurance and everything else. So if you go beyond this date, we're gonna subtract a certain amount if it's not approved, so that we can make sure that we aren't paying these things because of something that you could have avoided when you were working on somebody else's job. The important thing here is there is conflicting interests. Everyone's interests aren't necessarily aligned. The buyer's agent's trying to make money regardless if you make money when you sell it. The general contractor wants to make money regardless if you make money when you sell it. The seller's agent wants to make money, and he might make that money by working with others buyer's agents. So your home inspector has that. The contractor's doing multiple jobs. There are a lot of conflicting interests that are happening here. And so the way we work around that is we get clarity. We get that clarity by understanding what their potential interests are. We get clarity by not just believing that they have our best interest in heart. We question it, and we document it, and we put it down in writing so everybody is on the same page. So then we can make sure that we're all working in the same direction. Now, I don't think there's anything you can do that's going to take away these conflicts where there's conflicting interests. I just don't think there's anything. Even if you're working with the greatest person in the world, there could be some things that are going to cause some conflict, whether they recognize that or don't recognize that, whether that's illogical or illogical. These types of things happen. So the way we do that is by putting things in place to make sure that everybody is on the same page.